November 3, 1942. Somewhere in the Egyptian desert, 60 miles west of Alexandria. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel stands in his command vehicle, dust-caking his leather jacket. Around him, the Afrika Korps is disintegrating. British shells scream overhead, burning panzers dot the horizon. In his hand, a decoded message from Berlin. 4 words that will force him to choose between loyalty and survival, victory or death. Hold fast. Signed, Adolf Hitler. Montgomery's 8th Army has just broken through at El Alamein. Rommel knows his men can't hold, but Hitler has forbidden retreat. What happens next will define Rommel's legacy and cost 37,000 men. 6 months earlier, North Africa looks very different. Summer 1942. Rommel's Afrika Korps stands 60 miles from Alexandria, threatening the Suez Canal, the British Empire's lifeline to India and the Far East. Rommel is Germany's most celebrated general, the Desert Fox, master of mobile warfare. He's humiliated the British for 2 years, racing across Libya and Egypt with inferior numbers but superior tactics. Newspapers in Berlin call him invincible. Children play with toy panzers painted with his Afrika Korps insignia. He's the face of German military genius. But by October, everything changes. Britain's new 8th Army commander arrives, Bernard Montgomery. 50, 4 years old. Methodical, uncompromising. Where previous British commanders rushed into battle and lost, Monty refuses to move until he's ready. He rebuilds the 8th Army from scratch. Massive supply convoys arrive from Britain and America, new Sherman tanks, self-propelled artillery, squadrons of Hurricane and Spitfire fighters. Montgomery drills his divisions relentlessly. He tells them they will not attack until victory is certain. Meanwhile, Rommel's supply lines are strangled. Allied naval forces and aircraft sink convoy after convoy, crossing the Mediterranean from Italy. His panzers run on fumes. His soldiers eat half rations. Ammunition is rationed. Every shell counts. Rommel knows what's coming. He's exhausted, sick with stomach problems and low blood pressure. His doctors order him back to Austria for rest. But before he leaves in late September, he warns Berlin. The British are preparing something big. We need fuel, ammunition, reinforcements. Berlin promises. The supplies never come. October 23, 1942, 9:40 p.m. The desert night explodes. Over 1,000 British artillery guns open fire simultaneously. The barrage is so intense the ground shakes 10 miles away. Operation Lightfoot begins. Montgomery launches the Second Battle of El Alamein with 195,000 men, 1,029 tanks, and over 2,000 artillery pieces. This is industrial warfare. The barrage is apocalyptic. British infantry and sappers advance through minefields under searchlight beams that turn night into day. Engineers clear paths with mine detectors. Casualties mount. But Montgomery expected this. He's grinding Rommel down with firepower and numbers. Rommel's Panzer Army Africa has 104,000 men, 50,000 German, 54,000 Italian. $480 tanks, many of them obsolete Italian models that can barely penetrate British armor. And critically, desperately low fuel reserves, 3 days' supply at most. In Austria, Rommel receives an urgent telegram. October 25th. The 8th Army has attacked in overwhelming force. The situation is critical. He boards a plane immediately, flies through the night, lands in North Africa on October 26 and drives straight to his headquarters near the front. What he finds shocks him. His chief of staff, Fritz Bayerlein, spreads maps across the sand table. The defensive lines are collapsing. Entire Italian divisions have been overrun. British armor is pushing through the minefields. Rommel studies the situation. His face is grim. He turns to Bayerlein. Monty isn't Auchinleck. He won't be rushed. He'll use his guns and tanks like a steamroller, and we have no fuel to maneuver. Bayerlein asks, can we hold? Rommel's answer is blunt. We can bleed him, but we cannot win. For the next week, Rommel fights a desperate defensive battle. British infantry grind through the minefields yard by yard. Tank battles rage around kidney-shaped ridges. Rommel tries to counterattack with his panzer reserves, the 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions, but every move burns precious fuel. His Italian divisions begin to crumble under the relentless bombardment. Entire battalions surrender. By November 1st, German panzer strength is down to 150 operational tanks. The British still have 800. The mathematics are simple. Rommel is being crushed. His diary entry from this period survives. The enemy's superiority is crushing. Our supplies have not arrived. If this goes on, catastrophe is inevitable. He picks up the field telephone, calls Field Marshal Kesselring in Rome. Kesselring is Supreme Commander South, technically Rommel's superior, though Rommel has operated independently for years. Rommel's voice is hoarse from shouting orders over artillery fire. I need fuel and reinforcements now or I cannot hold this position. Kesselring's reply is bureaucratic and useless. The Führer insists you hold the line. Every convoy we send is being sunk by British aircraft and submarines. Rommel's response is ice cold. Then tell the Führer the Afrika Korps will be destroyed in the next 72 hours. He slams down the phone. Within 48 hours, Rommel will realize Montgomery isn't just trying to push him back, he's trying to annihilate him, and Hitler is about to make escape impossible. November 2nd, 1942. 1 a.m. Montgomery launches Operation Supercharge, the second phase of his plan, a concentrated armored thrust aimed at breaking through Rommel's last defensive line at Tel el-Akakir. The British barrage begins again, massive, relentless. Over 300 guns concentrate fire on a narrow front. New Zealand infantry and British regiments punch a hole in the line. At dawn, 3 armored brigades pour through the gap, hundreds of tanks advancing in formation. Rommel's panzers fight desperate counterattacks. German tank commanders are skilled, experienced, but they're overwhelmed. Not by skill, but by sheer numbers. 800 British tanks against 150 German. It's not a battle. It's arithmetic. By midday November 2nd, the Axis front collapses. The Italian Trento and Bologna divisions disintegrate. Thousands of Italian soldiers throw down their weapons and surrender. They have no transport, no fuel, no hope. Rommel stands in his command post, staring at the map. He realizes the truth. He has perhaps 48 hours before Montgomery's armor encircles his entire force. 48 hours before 60,000 German and Italian soldiers are killed or captured in the desert. The decision crystallizes. He must retreat, now. But Hitler has forbidden any withdrawal. Rommel has asked for freedom of action before. Always, Hitler has refused. But this time, Rommel will ask anyway. He has to try. Afternoon of November 3rd. Rommel sits at his field desk. Around him, the sounds of battle grow closer. British aircraft strafe the roads. Artillery impacts shake the walls of his command bunker. He drafts an urgent message to Adolf Hitler and OKW, the German High Command. His hand is steady. The words are careful, diplomatic, but the message is clear. After 10 days of extremely hard fighting against overwhelming British superiority on the ground and in the air, our front has been penetrated. Our strength is exhausted. In these circumstances, we must expect the enemy to break through our attenuated front. It will then be impossible to prevent the complete destruction of the army. I request freedom of action. He hands the message to the signals officer, sends it via radio to East Prussia, then waits. Evening, November 3rd, 1942. Hitler's response arrives. The radio operator decodes it and hands it to Rommel. Rommel reads it once. His face hardens. He reads it again. Then he walks slowly into the main command tent where his staff officers are waiting. Bayerlein, Westphal, his intelligence officers, all of them exhausted, covered in dust. They've been fighting for 11 days straight. The room goes silent when Rommel enters. He holds up the message. His voice is flat. Emotionless, he reads aloud. To Field Marshal Rommel. In the situation in which you find yourself, there can be no thought of anything but holding out, not yielding a step, and throwing every weapon and every fighting man who can still be freed into the battle. It would not be the first time in history that the stronger will has triumphed over stronger enemy battalions. You can show your troops no other way than that which leads to victory or death. Adolf Hitler. Silence. No one moves. Chief of Staff Westphal speaks first. His voice is quiet, almost a whisper. He's ordering us to die. Rommel sets the message down on the map table. He looks at his officers. Hitler doesn't understand. He's 2,000 miles away in a forest in East Prussia. He hasn't seen the enemy's tanks. He hasn't counted our fuel trucks. An intelligence officer asks the question everyone is thinking. What do we do? Rommel stands. His jaw is tight. His decision is made. Prepare the retreat. All mobile units pull back tonight. We save what we can. It's the defining moment of his career. The impossible choice. Obey Hitler and watch 60,000 men die in a futile last stand. Watch the Afrika Korps be annihilated for nothing. Or disobey a direct order from the Führer of the German Reich. Face court-martial, execution, disgrace, betrayal of every oath he swore as a German officer. But maybe, just maybe, save enough men to fight another day. Rommel chooses his men. He chooses survival over blind obedience. He chooses reality over ideology. Night of November 3rd into November 4th. Under cover of darkness, Rommel's orders go out. German mobile units begin the withdrawal. The 90th Light Division, remnants of the 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions, reconnaissance battalions. They pack up headquarters, destroy documents, load wounded soldiers onto trucks, disable damaged vehicles that can't be moved. The retreat begins, but there's a catastrophic problem. The Italian infantry divisions have almost no motorized transport, no trucks, no fuel for the few vehicles they have. Rommel is forced to make a brutal decision. The Italians must stay behind, delay the British as long as possible, then surrender. Thousands of men abandoned in the desert. Rommel writes in his diary later that this decision haunts him, but he has no choice. He can only save the mobile forces. November 4, 1942. Dawn. Montgomery's reconnaissance units report the German positions are empty. The enemy is retreating. Monty doesn't hesitate. He unleashes his armor. The pursuit begins. British tanks, armored cars, and motorized infantry chase the retreating Axis columns west across the desert. The Royal Air Force conducts relentless strafing and bombing runs. Hurricanes and Spitfires swoop down on German convoys. Trucks explode. Tanks burn. Soldiers dive into the sand for cover. Rommel's diary entry from November 4th survives in his papers. The army is in full retreat. Relentless enemy air attacks. Enormous losses. It's a catastrophe. And then, November 4th, midday, a second signal arrives from Hitler. This one is even more furious than the first. Hitler has learned that Rommel ignored his stand-fast order. The message repeats the order. It accuses Rommel of defeatism, of losing his nerve, of betraying Germany. Rommel reads it. His hands don't shake. He sets it aside. Ignores it entirely. Kesselring, watching from Rome, tries to intervene. He's caught between the Führer's rage and Rommel's defiance. He doesn't want to see Rommel court-martialed. He radios the Afrika Korps headquarters, gets Rommel on the line. The conversation is tense. Kesselring almost pleading. Rommel, you must acknowledge the Führer's order. Rommel's voice is flat, cold. I've already given the order to retreat. You can tell Berlin I'll accept full responsibility. Kesselring tries again. Erwin, please, the Führer will have you arrested when you return to Germany. Rommel's answer ends the conversation. Let him. I'm saving what's left of this army. The line goes dead. For 48 hours, Rommel's defiance saves thousands of soldiers. But Hitler's 24-hour delay has already doomed thousands more. The retreat that should have begun on November 2nd started on November 4th, 24 hours. In that time, Montgomery's forces tightened the noose, cut off escape routes, captured entire units. The question now is whether Rommel will face a firing squad when he gets home. November 4th through 11th, 1942. The long retreat across Libya begins. Historians will later call it the March of Death. British armor and air power savage the retreating columns. Axis soldiers, mostly Italians, left behind without transport, are captured by the thousands. Equipment is abandoned for lack of fuel. Trucks, tanks, artillery pieces, anti-aircraft guns, all left burning in the desert sand. Rommel's mobile units, the German motorized divisions, managed to stay ahead of the British pursuit. But the Afrika Korps is gutted, bled white. The numbers tell the brutal story. Total Axis losses at El Alamein and the retreat, October 23rd through November 11th, 1942. 37,000 total casualties, 9,000 killed in action, 15,000 wounded, over 30,000 captured, the vast majority Italian infantry, 450 tanks destroyed or captured, 1,000 artillery pieces lost. British and Commonwealth casualties are 13,500, including 2,350 killed. But Montgomery has achieved his objective, a crushing, decisive victory, the first major Allied land victory against Germany in the entire war. The tide has turned. November 11th, 1942. Rommel's retreating columns reach the Libyan border. He stops to assess what's left, fewer than 30,000 combat-effective troops, 80 operational tanks. That's all. From an army of 104,000 men and nearly 500 tanks, this is what survives. Rommel sits in his command vehicle and writes a letter to his wife Lucy back in Germany. The letter survives in archives. The battle is lost. We barely escaped total destruction. The Führer's order to hold fast cost us 24 hours and thousands of men. It's one of the few times Rommel directly criticizes Hitler in writing. Years later, military historians analyze Rommel's decision. They run the numbers. The consensus is clear and damning for Hitler's intervention. If Rommel had been allowed to begin the retreat on November 2nd, when he first assessed the situation as hopeless, he could have saved an additional 5,000–10,000 troops. He could have evacuated substantial equipment, tanks, artillery, fuel dumps. Hitler's stand-fast order delayed the retreat by approximately 24 hours. In those 24 hours, Montgomery's forces closed the trap. The cost can be calculated. If the retreat had been ordered on November 2nd, military analysts estimate Axis casualties at 25,000 to 30,000. Equipment saved would have included around 200 tanks. But the actual retreat, delayed until November 4th, cost 37,000 total casualties. Only 80 tanks were saved. Hitler's order to stand fast cost an additional 7,000 to 12,000 men. and 120 tanks. 24 hours. That's what it cost. Back in East Prussia, at the Wolfschanze headquarters, Adolf Hitler is enraged. Rommel has disobeyed a direct order, but Hitler faces a political problem. Rommel is Germany's most popular general, the hero of France, the Desert Fox. If Hitler courts-martials Rommel now, it will devastate military and civilian morale. Goebbels, the propaganda minister, warns Hitler against it. So Hitler does nothing publicly. Goebbels' propaganda machine works overtime to spin El Alamein as a temporary setback, a strategic withdrawal in the face of overwhelming odds. The newspapers praise Rommel's fighting retreat, but privately, at Wolfschanze, Hitler never forgives him. This moment marks the beginning of the Führer's deep distrust of his field marshals. In Hitler's mind, they lack will, they lack faith. Hitler speaks to his staff. Jodl and Keitel are there. Hitler's voice is bitter. Rommel has disobeyed me. He lost his nerve when he should have stood fast. Jodl, the chief of operations, tries to present the military reality. But mein Führer, if Rommel had stayed, the entire Afrika Korps would have been destroyed. He saved 30,000 men. Hitler's response is final, unyielding. I gave him an order to hold. Victory or death. He chose retreat. He failed. December 1942. Rommel is back in North Africa, now defending Tunisia against the Allied armies closing in from both sides. He writes in his diary. The entry is private, reflective. A commander must have the courage to disobey when obedience means the senseless sacrifice of his men. I would make the same decision again, but I will never forget the men we lost in those 24 hours. Historians preserve this entry. It's one of the clearest expressions of Rommel's philosophy of leadership. Loyalty to soldiers over loyalty to ideology. El Alamein changes the war. November 10, 1942. Winston Churchill addresses the British Parliament. The chamber is packed. Churchill's voice booms. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. 2 days earlier, on November 8th, American and British forces launched Operation Torch, amphibious landings in Morocco and Algeria. Rommel is now trapped. One Allied army pushes from the east, another from the west. There is no escape. By May 1943, the Afrika Korps and Italian forces in Tunisia surrender. 275,000 Axis troops are captured. Germany's entire North African army is gone, obliterated. But what happens to Rommel? 1943. He's recalled from Africa, given command in Italy briefly, then sent to France to oversee construction of the Atlantic Wall defenses against the expected Allied invasion. He works tirelessly, inspects beaches, builds bunkers, plants obstacles, prepares for D-Day, but Rommel is changing. He's losing faith. July 1944. Evidence suggests Rommel is involved, at least peripherally, in the conspiracy to assassinate Hitler. He's wounded in an Allied air attack on July 17th, 3 days before the bomb plot. He survives the strafing, recovers at home in Herrlingen, but the Gestapo is closing in. After the July 20th bomb plot fails, Hitler orders mass arrests. Rommel's name comes up in interrogations. October 14th, 1944. 2 generals arrive at Rommel's home. They bring a message directly from Adolf Hitler. Rommel meets them outside. They tell him the Gestapo has evidence linking him to the conspiracy. Hitler is offering a choice. Option 1, public trial for treason. Rommel and his family will be arrested, his name dragged through the mud. Execution is certain. Or option 2, suicide. Rommel takes poison now. The official story will be that he died from his wounds sustained in the air attack. He'll receive a state funeral, full military honors. His family will be protected, his pension preserved. Rommel goes inside, says goodbye to his wife Lucy, his son Manfred. He tells them the truth. Then he gets into the general's staff car. They drive into the countryside. 10 minutes later, Rommel swallows a cyanide capsule. He's 52 years old. Germany is told their greatest general died a hero's death from wounds. Thousands attend the funeral. Only after the war does the truth emerge. Hitler had Rommel murdered. So historians ask the question: did Rommel's defiance at El Alamein save the Afrika Korps, or merely delay its inevitable destruction? The debate continues. But there's unanimous consensus on one critical point. Hitler's stand-fast obsession didn't just lose battles. It lost armies. Thousands upon thousands of veteran troops who could have fought in Tunisia, Italy, France, and Germany were sacrificed for ideology, for pride, for Hitler's refusal to accept military reality. Rommel's moral choice on November 3, 1942 was clear. Loyalty to his men versus loyalty to the Führer. He chose his soldiers. He chose life over meaningless death. And he paid for that choice with his life. 2 years later, There's a profound leadership lesson buried in the sands of El Alamein. A leader must know when obedience becomes complicity, when following orders means the senseless destruction of those you're sworn to protect. Rommel faced that choice on November 3, 1942, with Montgomery's tanks closing in and Hitler 2,000 miles away issuing fantasy orders. He chose defiance. He chose survival. He chose his men over his oath. History remembers him not as a traitor but as a commander who understood the ultimate duty of leadership. Of the 104,000 Axis soldiers who fought at El Alamein, 37,000 became casualties in the battle and retreat. Another 238 captured in Tunisia 6 months later. Hitler's refusal to allow strategic withdrawals didn't just cost battles, it cost entire armies. And ultimately, it cost Germany the war. El Alamein proved what Churchill and Roosevelt already believed. Germany could be beaten, not through miracles or willpower or fanatical resistance, but through material superiority, methodical planning, and commanders willing to make hard decisions based on reality, not ideology. Montgomery ground Rommel down with overwhelming firepower. Rommel saved what he could by defying impossible orders. And Hitler, sitting in his headquarters 2,000 miles from the fighting, learned absolutely nothing. He would repeat the same mistake at Stalingrad 2 months later, at Kursk, at Normandy, in the Ardennes. Every single time Hitler ordered his generals to hold fast, to never retreat, to choose victory or death, and every single time it cost thousands of lives for no strategic gain. Rommel understood the truth in November 1942. Sometimes retreat is not cowardice, it's the only path to survival. Sometimes disobedience is not betrayal, it's the highest form of loyalty. If this story made you rethink what you thought you knew about Rommel and the Desert War, subscribe to WW2 Sentinel Files. We uncovered the decisions, betrayals, and impossible choices that shaped history. Here's a question for you. If you were Rommel on November 3, 1942, with Hitler's order in your hand and 60,000 men depending on you, would you have obeyed and stood fast, or would you have defied the Führer to save your army? Let me know in the comments. Next time, what Patton said when Eisenhower stopped him from reaching Berlin before the Soviets, the race that never happened, and the 45 years of Cold War that followed.